favorite bands, rock bands. 15 years ago, you would say, no way. But what was happening? It seems that it was always the best choice. It seems that the history was ending all time because there was no better choice any moment. So there's a very strange tension, and there's a very strange apparition of something that is called election blindness. Psychologists realize that if you trick someone in the moment they're making a choice, the people, instead of saying, wait, you are tricking me, that was not my choice was another thing, and you are doing something in this experiment that somehow is interfering with my choice, people start creating reasons. So it is not really the main thing to make a choice. The important thing is to have reasons on it, and the more you are in it, it doesn't matter what you choose in the end. So it matters how do you support it, and how are you organizing this structure around it.
But the difficult part is when you think that maybe those decisions are controlled by a parasite.
And what about like this thing? It's just interference. There are two very interesting things. In visual information, you have the noise in images, and strangely, noise in images, when you apply to an image that has very low resolution, more low resolution, you diminish giving noise to an image, suddenly the image goes sharp. It's a very strange effect. And it also strangely reminds me a very strange effect on synesthesia. The thing that I'm showing you, it's a dog. It's a dog in the moment of barking. So things are just placed in a very different organization. It's just like a matter of moving the circumstance and the values of the origin and in the moment it will appear into something else. Something will create itself in this moment.
Well, I am very nearsighted, and in a way, being nearsighted is also having two possibilities of seeing the world. If I put my glasses on, I see everything very sharply, but lately I cannot see things that are close very sharply with my glasses because I'm starting to get old. But if I take my glasses off, I can see perfectly well at very short distances, while the world is completely isolated from like 2 feet around my head. And when I do that, I can see the screen dots that conform a color image in a book, for example. And when I see that screen there, I see that like a fundamental instability of images, because an image is just a collection of screens that superimpose each other, of different surfaces that are always clashing with one another. I had an old professor in the university that made us do this brutal exercise that was to describe abstract monochrome paintings by writing. And it was really brutal exercise, because what do you describe in a monochrome painting? How can you describe it beyond saying it's red, yellow, blue? How do you describe a surface? And we know that it became like a real ordeal to do that. So the only way is to describe accidents, and that's the noise that you were talking about.
That reminds me this story of a house. It's a house that it's just in the middle of the fjords, and it reminds me also like this house, which is constructed in in the style of the Nordic way of constructing a house, but with a very strange move. Like the guy who made it built, he just changed the orientation of the ceiling. So suddenly, like this very traditional type of construction was seen as foreign, was seen like what is this house? And this house, just because of the way the ceiling was placed in relation to the whole town, it created like a very strange gap. It's also people start saying, but this is Austria. So suddenly, just because of like placing like a ceiling, you were in a different place. It was not a fjord. It was not shoulder. Then suddenly it was Austria.
You know about Viollet Leduc, this architect from the 19th century. He was like one of the most famous restorers in the world, and he actually did the restoration of Notre Dame, and he was very obsessed with detail, and he wanted to make Notre Dame like a more Gothic cathedral than it ever was. And to the end, at the end of his days, he wrote this very large treatise on the Mont Blanc Massif, that mountain in France, and he wanted to restore Mont Blanc to its initial state. So here is the proposal. He wanted to demolish this upper part, and so it becomes more like a mountain. He felt that Mont Blanc was like a wall, so it had to become more like a mountain. And he proposed to demolish that upper part of the Mont Blanc.
That reminds me also the story of André Breton arriving into Mexico. He arrives and he was so happy there, and he was asked to give a lecture, and so he said like, well, the only thing that I need is like a really nice table. So he arrived to like a carpenter, a furniture guy, and he drew like in a little paper, like just a really nice table, but in perspective. Just drew like you would draw like bump, bump, bump. He gave it to the carpenter, and 1 week later he arrived to pick up his table, and suddenly he realized that it was a very strange thing, a very strange object he received. It was like a table with this size, a monstrous size, and the other size a very small side. So like, what is this? And the guy said to him, that's what you wanted. That's your drawing.
Well, since that last example made me speechless, I want to talk about this fetish that is now all the rage in Japan, and it's called eyeball licking, and it's exactly what you see in that image. But what I find fascinating beyond beyond Japanese fetishes that are always fascinating is that the two most accultured organs in the human body, the eye and the tongue, are used in ways that they are rendered, that they're rendered useless for their cultural purposes. While the tongue is licking the eye, the tongue cannot speak and the eye cannot see. And there's just like two surfaces feeling each other, two surfaces that are never feeling each other. The eye never feels the tongue and the tongue never feels the eye.
Well, there is a very amazing experiment that in the University of Maryland that they are doing. They're starting making. They take like rats. They connect a circuit into the rat's brain, and they start like monitoring what's the rat brain activity while teaching the rat to be fed by a simple mechanism. So the rats start like pushing a little thing, and then they start realizing how to tell the rat how to push this thing, and the decoding and the system, and let's say like the dictionary of all these little impulses, just like creating like a certain basic words to tell just by a computer. But suddenly there was another more complicated experiment. They realized that if we are connecting a rat to a computer, why not just to tell the rat to tell another brain what is happening? So they realized the next experiment. They took this rat and they connected through a computer, and this computer was connected to the internet, and from the internet it went into another rat in Natal in Brazil, and they connected the rat. So basically you have two connected rats by the brain, and this rat needed to tell the other rat in Brazil how to push the buttons in order to both receive like a price of it. So suddenly you have like no boundaries in between these two rats. It was 70% percentage of like a good response, that both the rats start realizing that they could communicate just in the moment. The scientists told like a very nice story. They say it is difficult to achieve such a thing because the rat is used to use his own brain with the impulses and the feedback that it receives from reality. So the rat has to be trained to trust an information that is coming from nowhere, that's reality. And in the moment that the rat realizes, there's a click, and then suddenly they start communicating and controlling in between two rats.
So there is this clock that made a terrible noise the whole time, and this guy couldn't stand that noise. So he asked the guy who sold the clock to take it back, because he didn't like that clock, because he wanted a clock that was silent. This was in the 1940s. And the guy said, that's impossible, sir. I cannot get you a clock that will make no noise. So the guy goes away. It was just before the Second World War. And then, 10 years later, the owner of the store receives this clock that is glassed in, that is sandwiched in glass, and it's silent.
Many thanks, Eric. Many thanks, Bernardo.
This was the warm-up. It's cold.
Yeah, it's cold. Hopefully next week will be not that much of mosquitoes and not that much of cold. On Thursday, we will come before the major opening of the solo of Gerrit Wienevens. And Gerrit, who is a fabled Welsh artist, will be joined by Susan Stenger, a former member of Band of Susans and one of the most important